In many ways, the closed borders is helping people get into employment, but they haven't seen that wage rise. What do you say about this massive skill shortage in aged care and childcare, in many other sectors of the economy? Do you think there should be a special type of visa? I mean, healthcare and aged care for one. I mean, how long are people going to have to live in aged care without the adequate level of staffing?
Yeah, I think it's pretty amazing when you consider that we've got almost 2 million people who are either unemployed or underemployed. We've had an underemployment problem in the economy for much of the last 8 years. The government still hasn't got the skills and training match up right that we can fill some of the vacancies when they pop up. Now, the Treasurer last night was talking about the economy as an engine, but what he doesn't understand is that engine's got a number of gears and too many Australians are in reverse. And what I mean by a number of gears is it depends what sector you're in. Some parts of the economy are having trouble finding workers. Some parts of the economy are having trouble finding work, right? And it shouldn't be beyond the government, particularly if they're prepared to spray $100 billion around to solve some of these problems that have been piling up for 8 years.
What will you do?
Well, we've already made some announcements around apprenticeships for big government projects. We've already made a far more substantial policy proposal when it comes to childcare, making sure that people can participate in work. It's absolutely astonishing in the budget you would have seen that despite the government's package, $1.7 billion, workforce participation actually goes down once that's introduced in the government's budget. So there are a range of things. Among the many deficits in the budget last night was a deficit of vision about how we create an economy which is stronger after COVID than it was before, and importantly, where people can actually grab the opportunities in a recovering economy.
Let's talk about the assumptions when it comes to COVID, opening the borders, the vaccine rollout. I think it's clear as mud, to be frank. We don't have any of those assumptions in the budget. Yeah. It's a vague timeline of the end of this year and then opening up to international students last year. Dominic Perrottet has been in New South Wales. I mean, the closed borders internationally are costing his economy $1.5 billion a month. So he's motivated by that. But what is Labor calling for? I mean, going into an election, no one expects a government to say when, because there are too many unknowns about this pandemic and the virus is what it is. But could you at least tell us how? Do you have a clearer pathway than the government?
Yeah, well, yes, but first of all, I mean, the budget was an opportunity to say to Australians, this is what the vaccination rollout looks like, this is when we're going to get everyone vaccinated by, this is what it means for the economy, and these are the costs and consequences of getting it so badly and shambolically wrong to this point, right? And they didn't do that. We've said for some time there's an issue around quarantine, it needs federal government action, that was missing from the budget. We've said for some time we need clarity on the vaccination rollout. The lack of clarity, as Dominic Perrottet has pointed out, is compromising the recovery and costing jobs. We need to get some clarity. Unfortunately, even in the space of the last 24 hours, the Treasurer and the Prime Minister are singing from a completely different song sheet when it comes to this. It's more confusing after the budget than it was before what the government intends to do to fix up this mess they've made of vaccinations and quarantine.
Indeed. So will you promise to... Well, I mean, we're close to an election, apparently. When are you going to start making promises? Building new quarantine facilities, more funding for that? How will you open the borders?
Well, we've already been speaking about quarantine facilities, personal protective equipment in quarantine. We've been talking about building a manufacturing capacity for vaccines. We've already made a number of positive suggestions. And obviously we'll have more to say between now and the election.
Okay.
Whenever the election is.
I think we're going to hear that line a fair few times between now and wherever that may be. Jim Chalmers, thanks so much.
Thank you, Laura.